Today on Doomed! The long-awaited decision is finally here. Is Trump back on Facebook? Or is the former president banned from the social network forever? Well, what if I told you Facebook's Oversight Board technically decided neither? I highly doubt Mark Zuckerberg is happy with the outcome of this one. On this episode of Doomed with Matt Binder, Shireen Mitchell, founder of Stop Online Violence Against Women and member of the real Facebook Oversight Board, joins the show to break down what happened and what it all means. And without further ado, we'll jump right in. Let me pull myself and Shireen up on the video feed here. And here we are. Shireen Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have this conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Now, I actually had an episode about Facebook last week, and this one was about the leaked internal memo that came out that BuzzFeed News got a hold of that basically looked where Facebook was looking at internally how they failed to stop the Steal movement, which then, of course, ended up leading to the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And now I usually try not to do, 2 episodes on one company, at least back to back. But then the Oversight Board on Monday, after that last episode, comes out and says they're going to come out with this announcement on this long-awaited Trump decision in 2 days. And, of course, that happened yesterday, and I had to cover it, and I'm so glad you're joining me now to talk about this. Now, I guess before we jump into the decision, can you explain to people who might not be familiar with what the Facebook's it's going to get confusing, I think, until we discuss this part. Can you discuss what Facebook's Oversight Board is, and then discuss what your group is, the real Facebook Oversight Board?
Absolutely. So what Facebook decided to do was have what they considered an independent or third-party group of people, about 20 people or so, to decide whether or not the processes of suspending or banning people was adequate, particularly for contentious debates, which in some ways, in my opinion, this is my opinion, basically gives it off to someone else instead of the organization themselves and Zuckerberg himself to be held accountable for the actions that are happening on the platform that he designed. That oversight board is still connected to the organization. Those people are paid by the organization. And so even though there's more international people there than American, which I think was the point, the goal was to sort of have a global perspective on what decisions the company was making in terms of content moderation. And basically their charge is only content moderation. This is not a group of people who are focused on the business model. This is not a group of people who are paying attention to what the political ads are or what the disinformation is. They don't have any of those charges. Their only charge is about content moderation, which is we can have a different conversation about that because that's only one part of the overall problem with Facebook. But that's their charge. And the goal is to have certain cases that are able to go through appeals as if there was like in America, like there's a state court and then there's an appeals process and then it goes to the Supreme Court. Like that's kind of the model they think they were creating, but there's no state appeals here, and this is just them outside of their own sort of decision-making process that they felt like internally for some reason that they weren't able to do on their own, which I have a problem with, and I don't agree with that. They have the power to make these decisions. And then the real Facebook Oversight Board, of which I'm a member of, are a coalition of people who are also international with perspectives of experiences from journalists to data scientists like myself, to organizers such as ADL and Color Change, and researchers, for example, Sophia Noble, and people like Maria Ressa, who experienced some of the major, aspects of what these platforms can do and she got arrested because of some of that disinformation that gets spread on these platforms. So we came together to, as extremely outside of the organization, looking at the decisions that are being made, looking at the communities that we are a part of. Our organization tracks the way in which these platforms, Facebook in particular, in this instance, suspends and bans Black and brown women for simple things like saying white people, and how there's a disproportionate way in which the content moderation system has been used, depending on who you are, what status you have. And hopefully we'll talk more about that, but that's the reason why there is a distinct difference. We are not associated with Facebook. We're trying to hold Facebook accountable.
Right, right. Now, I think also I wanna really stress the fact that the Facebook Oversight Board, Facebook's independent body, it's funded by Facebook,
Yes.
and the members of this oversight board, the members of this independent body, put on there by Facebook. And I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I know they say that these members make the decisions on their own without any enforcement or pressure from the main company apparatus. But I mean, they're on there because the company put them there.
Yes.
And so let's now we'll get back to a lot of what you just mentioned before, but I want to now jump into the decision that people were waiting for since January 21st, when Facebook made the decision to, on their own, kick the final word to the oversight board on Donald Trump's suspension. Now, they suspended him the day after January 6th in the wake of the storming of the Capitol, which saw a violent Trump mob break into the building, and 5 people died that day.
Yes.
And Facebook said that they had suspended Trump because he was inciting violence, which we could get into some of the previous things he said over the past year or more later on. But that was their reason for January 6th. And so they kicked this to the Facebook Oversight Board, the independent body, and they basically say, this decision is too big for us, so that's why we sent it to the Oversight Board. Again, we could talk about that too in a minute. But what did the Oversight Board decide yesterday when they finally came out with this long-awaited decision?
The fact that it took them 4 months to come up with this decision, in a nutshell, they could have made the same decision like a week later. So basically what they said is that Facebook was right in suspending him, but the penalty of indefinite suspension is something that Facebook has to deal with, making sure their policies are clear about. So this isn't a ban. Like, the first thing that comes out from media is like he got banned, or the status of his ban is still in existence. This isn't a ban. This is a suspension that's basically temporary. That means, and they also suggested in 6 months that they clean up their own systems around who gets banned, who doesn't, how their moderation process or penalties should exist, because none of that is clear. And that in 6 months to revisit this and decide what kind of status he actually has. Is he suspended or is he banned? Is basically the question that was kicked back to Facebook. So the argument that they have is that the content that they suspended him over was problematic, and the decision that they made was accurate. But the penalty of indefinite suspension is debatable.
Right, right. And the thing, too, that they mentioned that I thought was really interesting was that Facebook's own guidelines make no mention of an indefinite suspension as a penalty. Like, they basically just made up this designation for Trump. I mean, in my estimation, they didn't want to say that they outright banned him.
Right.
Or they wanted to keep the door open by saying it was an indefinite suspension for his eventual return, maybe sometime down the line. Either way, it really shines a light on how they didn't want to make this hard decision and why they sent it to the Facebook Oversight Board to begin with. And then the ultimate irony is that this board that was completely set up with the whole foundation of it being so Facebook doesn't have to make these hard decisions, basically blows up in Mark Zuckerberg's face and says, "You got to make the decision because we're not making it for you."
Exactly. Yeah, so the way that the oversight board is designed is that whatever decision that they make, it is basically something that he's not supposed to be able to overturn or have any actions on. And when I read the original, format of this, it was to give him absolution about any decision that he made. So it was like it would be binding whatever decision that they made. So it's funny that they made this sort of two-part decision. Everybody was looking for a simple yes or no, and so was probably Zuckerberg himself. And that's not what came out of this. And I think that some of the things I've heard some of the board members speak about after this decision was that for them, they were asking for more clarity and asking Facebook to do different things, and they haven't gotten responses that they want. So it makes it difficult for them to make some of the decisions that they are being asked to make. But that still, in my opinion, doesn't matter because the decision is still based on Zuckerberg's decision in his company. So to me, this was a little bit of a punt, but it was also sort of a conversation that says, well, the terms of service or their community standards are not clear enough and penalties aren't clear enough, and that Facebook needs to come up with something consistent. And if they're going to make up a penalty like they did with him, that means that they can make up any penalty as they go, and that should be clear in their standards as well.
Right, right. And like you mentioned earlier, they could have made this decision in like a week. Instead, they took 4 months. The Facebook Oversight Board, Mark Zuckerberg announced its formation back in 2018.
Yes.
And then it wasn't until this past last spring, spring 2020, did they actually start putting members on the board. And then
Yes.
it wasn't until December of last year that they actually announced the first cases that the board was going to take up. And then in the next month, January of 2021, this year, that's when they came out with the their rulings on all those first cases.
Yes.
Which shows that they haven't been around for. So my point here is that they haven't been around for all that long. And then number two, they were able to come to the decision on 6 different cases in a matter of a month. Whereas this one, they basically didn't come to a decision in 4 months. Like you mentioned, it was a decision that could have been made in no time. They say they had 9,000 plus public comments they had to go through. I mean, there's a lot of public comments to go through and still not come to a decision.
I know it's really, it's like I would have loved to know like what was. I mean, I think they published the actual the public comments. I would have liked to know how many of those comments was leaning one way or the other in terms of this decision, and for us to know like for them like why they made the decision based on that. Was it the weight of the comments on one side versus the other? But the other thing that I want to say is that let's just be clear that this oversight board, the real Facebook oversight board, was formed in September. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that they finally took cases 2 months later.
Pressured.
So when we think about like some of the reasons that they do certain things, unfortunately, even this seems like to be a little bit of a PR move with some expectation that would give some absolution. And I do feel that like this case was more high profile as they wanted to define it. But the truth is, I haven't seen many cases that they've taken up that wasn't sort of a kind of high profile case in certain countries on certain issues. So it feels to me that the cases that's going to the oversight board are those that they deem that they're going to have PR problems with it, and they're trying to come up with a quote unquote independent decision. And I just don't see that happening if it's funded by Facebook itself.
Right. And one thing I saw online when this decision came out, and I think a lot of people overall misunderstood it, but from a lot of conservatives I saw online who misunderstood it, they were automatically claiming that the oversight board, Facebook's oversight board, is made up of like liberals and commies, and and it's like if you look at what the board's makeup, I mean, it's a very international membership in terms of people who aren't basically stuck in the sort of U.S.'s
Right.
ideological spectrum. Also, the vice president of the Cato Institute's on the board. I mean, this is so when they do throw an American on the board, they went with an American who's on the board of a very conservative group in this country.
Yes.
So I mean, it's not like this is like, Mark Zuckerberg decided to put Media Matters and Right Wing Watch members on the board. Although wouldn't have been so bad. But
They didn't want it to seem that they were biased. Although the Cato Institute says biased to me. I don't know about you.
All right. Well, the Cato Institute is a beloved American institution, obviously, that no one would ever look at as bipartisan. But we're talking. I think we're right now. The conversation is talking within the confines of the oversight board existing and actually having this sort of power over Facebook. I mean, I know and I guess I should mention to people that these content moderation decisions that the oversight board makes, they are just for these specific cases. Facebook is bound to, like, if the oversight board said Trump must be let back on the platform, if that's what they decided, Facebook would have been bound to let him back on the platform. But all those policy recommendations that the Facebook oversight board gives, along with that specific individual content ruling, are just suggestions. Facebook is not bound to listen to those at all. And the funny thing is, like, really on a broader sense, who cares about the individual cases? What really matters are these broad policy suggestions that would affect people like you, me, and everybody else on the platform. It is a joke.
No, absolutely. It's the interesting part is, like, the choices of the cases are not something that the board can do, which is interesting, right? They're not plucking from the list themselves to say, here's a case that we're going to choose to look at. They're also being sent those cases by Facebook. So again, cases sent by Facebook, funded by Facebook, and somehow they're supposed to have a charge on content moderation, send back a decision that's supposed to be binding, but any other recommendations about what should be done different on the platform, what the moderation process should look like, again, the business model, anything like that, any conversations around the political ads or the disinformation in political ads, they have no charge there.
Right. Now, before we move outside of this, I guess this reality that the Facebook oversight group is this body that gets to make these decisions, and we talk more broadly about Facebook itself, I do want to mention that I actually think that the oversight board ruling is a good one for everybody but Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, because it sort of forces Facebook to make this decision. And then B, I actually think, when they said that they said that they needed Facebook to decide whether what Trump said is the punishment that they dealt out fit what he actually did, and then they have to levy that to everybody. They actually have to dole out that penalty to everybody equally. Now, to me, I think this puts them in a real bind because, and this might be, to people who watch this show, people might not expect me to have this sort of take on this specific thing, but I personally think this puts them in a bind because when you look at what Trump said that day, January 6th, and this is just my opinion, and you put it in line with other things he said, I mean, obviously, what he said in the context of what was going on out there at the Capitol building is horrible. But what he actually said, in my point of view, compared to previous things he's tweeted or posted on Facebook, it's not as bad as stuff he put out previously that Facebook let slide. So to me, it's incredible that they would have to ban Trump and then also decide that this would be something that they would rule against everybody. Again, what Trump said that day was he basically called these people patriots and said, you'll remember this day forever. They were already there doing it at this point, doing their violent riot at this point. But he was sort of promoting it and egging it on. But he previously did much worse that Facebook was like, this isn't a problem. And I guess this is where we could segue. First, let me let you comment on that. And then we could segue into what I want to talk about, specifically what I have in mind, is the Trump comments that came last summer. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Because, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me get your feelings on what I just said about how, to me, what Trump said on January 6th might put Facebook in a corner to dole out permanent bans for what doesn't really amount to what I think is a crime worthy of that punishment.
So, my opinion, if you want my opinion, is that that's the reason why they picked those, because that series of words gets to fall into freedom of speech arguments. It was not a mistake to pick those and use those as the example, but talk about the horrible things that was happening at the insurrection, right? Like those two things can have, it's sort of saying, well, there was this online thing that was being said and we saw this offline reaction. So there may be some correlation here because they're related on this day. Like this is the correlation that we can actually have. But what they're doing also is saying, but those words are not actually incitement to violence, right? The looting starts, the shooting starts is. Right? So they have terms that they're using that says, well, this will fall into a middle ground where, two sides will debate this and we won't have to worry about really banning him. Like my opinion is that they were opening their own doors for the penalty. Like, to me, that's what Facebook does in general with most of these decisions. But with the penalty, made up penalty, it wasn't suspension. It was indefinite suspension, a made up penalty for that moment. They picked the few, for that day that, could be debatable if you had to take those words to court, which is what they consider their oversight board, that that group of people would be debating over, is this really, if this was just the words by themselves, would it matter? Which is the question that you asked, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what that is. If these were alone and people didn't die, would these words really be problematic? If we're going to worry about incitement to violence, don't we also have to worry about that part? And he didn't say anything that was really insightful, was it? And so when you say that they puts them in a bind, I see them looking for a way out. It leaves a window.
Right.
What I do think is the oversight board decision puts them in a bind now, because now it's a Facebook job. And so they have to now make the decision of putting him back on or not. And I don't think he ever wanted to be held accountable for that. And so that to me is where, my opinion, they're going to take 6 months. But with everything else that this man has done, breaking the terms of service and community standards for the last 4 years, that's an easy decision. But what they're saying is that if we're going to use it based on this content specifically, then that decision becomes sort of up in the air. Right. It's the same thing that he did, right? Charlottesville, they're very fine people on both sides. So Facebook is just employing the same. This is both sides' argument. This decision can be hard depending on which side you choose. When people die, when on their platform, when they didn't respond to the organizing of Shoot Them All in Kenosha, people died. It's this sense of we're going to pay attention to the most marginalized free speech argument, but the rest of it, where other people are being harmed and targeted and marginalized, that somehow we're not going to have that hard conversation, because that conversation should be simple. But we're just not going to make it a PR conversation. We're just going to sort of pretend like we're going to have a real conversation about free speech, because Facebook right now spends a lot of energy trying to compare free speech and safety as if they're on the same scale.
Right.
And that's what they're after.
Right. It's interesting, and I do want to. I know there's been people who are in the chat on the live stream or who message me after the show when they listen to the podcast who are like, you're having this conversation, but Facebook's a private company. They could make a decision about whatever they want. They could ban whatever they want. They could let anyone on,
Oh
let
yeah.
anyone off. And of course, that let me put that up front. Of course, Facebook could decide to do whatever they want on their platform, but they've made these rules and set up this system for themselves where they are saying we don't want to abide to that. Basically, we want to be treated as if there are courts and rules and guidelines and regulations where we actually can't do that. So I just want to put that addendum out there that we're having this conversation bound to how Facebook views themselves.
There is not a single person that exists that has the right to be on this platform. Not one person. No matter their status, no matter their situation, this is a private company and no one has the right. And it's really funny to me while people demand free speech and demand the right to be on a platform that they don't own. Right. It's like demanding to be in a property that you don't own.
Right.
If it's a government property, fine. We might have an argument about that government property, like we just had on January 6th. Like, there's certain boundaries you cannot cross.
Right.
That's illegal.
Right.
Right. But is the sidewalk public property? Yeah.
Right.
Right. You do have a right there, and you can demand a right to be. Or you see people fighting over parking spaces. This is a public parking space. Yep. You can fight over it, but it's public.
Right.
A park, public. Those are things you can fight over and talk about free speech and a right to be in the public square in a public place. Facebook, Twitter, and the like are private companies. Nobody, millionaires, billionaires, the poorest of the poor, has the absolute right to be on these platforms. They can remove any of us at will at any moment. And then, by the way, they do it to certain people which we don't even speak to or have conversations with on a regular basis.
Right.
So it's very, I tell people all the time, just so that we're clear, I got deplatformed from YouTube in 2009 for speaking up about diversity in tech.
Right. They decide all the time.
So at least 10 plus years with me not being able to upload a single video on their platform because I was talking about diversity. That was something to be removed for. But, Alex Jones and conspiracy theorists can live forever. But, me talking about diversity or experiences that women of color are having in tech, well, that's a problem.
Right.
And we need to deplatform her for that.
Right.
So we're not talking, this is why I have a problem with the way that people are trying to speak about this. They're talking about things that are in context of what they think they have the right to, while ignoring all the people who've been removed that you don't even hear about because they're not classified as important or grew enough of a following. Like, I couldn't grow 10 years. It's past 10 years now. I could have grown a following from 2009 to present.
Right.
Right.
That's
right. I could have built a whole community, but my opportunity to do that, even to monetize, was removed. While everyone else thinks that they have the right to it. Right. That's what's different about this conversation.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that was that Facebook itself brought up when they punted this case to the Oversight Board is that, Trump is a political leader, an influential person on our platform. And, the Oversight Board basically said, you got to treat everybody the same on your platform. Why are you come up with these rules and basically the penalties need to be laid out. To equally. Like, I mean, we're going to comply. Obviously, we've already knocked the Oversight Board and what it really means. But at the same time, in this specific case, the Oversight Board actually blew up in Facebook's face, I think, and actually made points that I think a lot of people wanted to make themselves, and were shocked to see the Oversight Board make these. The Oversight Board, I think, actually made some points that the real Facebook Oversight Board would have made themselves if you guys had to make this ruling, But, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, Facebook gave Trump this designation of newsworthiness, and that's why all these years they couldn't do anything about him and what he said on the platform. And, I mean, I sort of get that argument in terms of like, people need to hear what certain people say, maybe, but
I don't agree with that argument at all.
right.
Finish if
No,
you
no,
want to finish, but I can tell you I do not agree with any of those arguments at all.
right. I mean, I get what they're saying, but in my opinion, I mean, you're running a platform. How are you gonna straight up tell certain people, certain users, that some users are more important than others? Straight up like that. It's just bizarre. Like, it's one thing to say, like, this user reached a certain viewership and subscriber base, so we will now monetize their content. That's a bonus you get for success on our platform. It's another thing to say success on our platform means you can break the rules.
Yes, that's what they're saying. That if you are successful enough to bring us enough traffic, enough energy, enough news, media attention, and the like, then our rules don't apply to you. That's literally what they're saying. And that doesn't matter if he's sitting in the Oval Office, or if he's a conspiracy theorist or a white supremacist. They're saying if you can bring this kind of traction for us, we'll bend the rules for you. And that in itself is a fundamental flaw of the system, because that's why they're pushing back on the moderation penalties, because they're not applied consistently or across all users. They're basically pick and choosing, and this case says that out loud. They're picking and choosing. They're even picking and choosing which part of the content they're going to decide to use as a reason to suspend or not. Like, they're not even, they didn't go back all 4 years and look at all the other places he incited violence, because there's some clear aspects, and we just talked about the looting starts and shooting starts, but there's others. And the fact that they're saying, well, we're going to pick this one moment because something bad happened at the Capitol, and what happened bad at the Capitol basically happened to other politicians and was an impact on our government and an impact on our election process. Well, whoa, we need to take a pause and now take a look at this. But everything else before that is fine.
Right.
And so to me, it's like, I have this comment about the whole, their old motto was move fast and break things. Like, yeah, they move fast and they break democracies too. And they're like, whoa, after we break it, and then figure out how to come up with a solution that isn't quite exactly a fix. But hey, we're coming up with something, and just understand that we are trying our best. And that's what we get, like, all the time. Apology after apology after apology. Nothing really changing dramatically. Nothing being fixed, really. But just enough to move on to the next conversation. And so what I feel about this is that this is going to be seen as the most high profile thing. Well, like, if you think about it, this is one person. However, the impact of this person on millions of users' lives is not being calculated in this data set, right? That's the other part that's missing. We're not talking about that part. Like, we're talking about the content being moderated and impressions and the like. But just think about that. If you think about from the context of, like, the anti-vaxxer and the Stop the Steal, like, that is an impact on millions of people now that believes a whole set of disinformation just because that it was able to be spread unfettered and unchecked on their platform. Like, we're not having that conversation. That's the conversation we're actually avoiding by having this quote unquote insurrection conversation.
Right. I mean, that's a great point. And you brought up the anti-vaxxer stuff. And I honestly think, when we talk about content that that's unquestionable, undeniable, we mentioned how, you could debate about what he said on January 6th. To me, the undeniable, there are people who literally died from taking his advice during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was, to me, nothing more dangerous than what he was saying during that time period. And not only did they not ban him, they didn't even temporarily suspend him. They just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It's
knowing the information was incorrect, knowing people were believing the things he was saying and not doctors. My understanding that even people in other countries were dying believing the things that he was saying. Like, again, the impact part of this conversation, we're not really having. And I feel like the way that people are talking about this is about free speech. Let me just say what I said at the interview at the presser yesterday. It's like, when you're arguing the point that someone who's in government, a politician, someone's holding the position of the Oval Office, has more right to speak than its citizens, we're no longer talking about free speech or the First Amendment. Because the First Amendment is about Congress should not be making laws that does not allow me as a citizen to speak up against the Congress or any other politician without being punished. If you're saying that he had more rights on this platform, you're saying the government had more rights for freedom of speech against its citizens.
Right.
And you're turning the First Amendment on its head.
Right. Right.
And that's not to leave it there. But if anyone who's trying to argue that point, that's a false narrative by itself. No politician, every politician who thinks they have the right to be on Facebook or Twitter over citizens, that their power of political speech, which it keeps being, what's the word I want to say, diluted to, as if politicians aren't the government. Every individual politician works for the government, i.e. they are the government. So if you're trying to tell me they're an individual in this moment, that doesn't make any sense. Now that he's no longer in office, we can have a different debate about that. But the first movement of that was that government should have this right, which is why he had that right for 4 years.
Right. Right.
And that's the problem with the conversation about free speech. Is being, in my opinion, it's being misconstrued to try to make a point that is disingenuous.
Right. And that I think brings in their current crusade against Section 230.
Yeah.
Because I don't think some of them, obviously, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Lauren Boeberts of the world probably do think the Constitution gives them the right to be on Facebook. But there are people who are smarter, not to give them too much credit, like the Ted Cruzes of the Republican Party, who know they don't have a right to be on Facebook. But that's why they're having this crusade against Section 230, because in my estimation, they view it as, we're losing this battle. The things that our side of the ideological spectrum are saying are breaking these guidelines on these platforms, and we're getting people are getting banned. People aren't able to spread their misinformation and conspiracy theories, their, right-wing talking points. And so that leaves these platforms to everybody else. Now, if we convince everybody that Section 230 is the problem, then we are leveling the playing field. Because right now, these platforms are, a utility or a weapon for the other side to use that we don't have access to because we're all getting banned. If Section 230 is taken away and these platforms are more careful and take down anything they feel like could cross the line and get them sued, or just frankly just view everything before it's posted so nothing gets posted in real time. Who knows what they would decide without Section 230? We are basically leveling the field. They can't say their left-wing viewpoints, their Democratic Party viewpoints, and they don't have a tool that we don't have. That's what I think this whole Section 230 battle comes from, at least from the smarter people of the Republican Party and on the right.
So, excuse me, Section 230 is going to get us into a whole bunch of different debates, but let me keep it simple. There are people on the right and the left who believe that Section 230 needs to be revamped. I believe so Shauna has basically come up with some framing. I have a friend, Daniel Citron, who actually thinks that Section 230 as it is could be used the way it is to still get at some of the problems that we're having. I think that the same way I feel about some of the laws that we already have in place, there's plenty of laws. Like, for example, just really simply, you cannot, threaten somebody's life in person. Like, if you and I were in front of each other and you threatened my life, you can get arrested for doing that, right?
Right.
But if we do it on the platform, somehow that law doesn't apply, right? So I'm saying that we aren't, even as Americans, consistent about the way we apply these things across the board. So the Section 230 argument, I can say that I believe that Section 230 should be revamped. However, the reason that those in agent, I can't have a name for him, but I shouldn't say it on air. Our former president wanted was because he did not want to have to be banned or suspended. He wanted to be able to say and do whatever he wanted. And he also actually, at one point, I forget which bill it is, forgive me for not remembering, he didn't want to sign one of those bills that was coming through because he wanted Section 230 to be added. Like, he was not going to sign it until Section 230 was added.
I remember what you're talking about, right.
I can't remember which one it is right now, but it was like one of the most high-profile things that was problematic. And you know what? I think this is the one. Please, like, we have to probably go back and do comments later.
It was the stimulus checks and the defense bill. He wanted Section 230
in the defense bill. And he vetoed it to get it back in there. And then they have voted against him on that, and they passed those bills. Like, the fact that he went that far for Section 230 is a tell for everyone. Because if he's going that far, there's a reason why he wants to go that far.
Honestly, though, my point of view, if we're going to cut military spending over Section 230, I'm fine with that.
No. So thank you for reminding me that, because I remember it was like, this was so high profile that like he was literally vetoing a defense bill. Like, just imagine a party who spends all their money on defense, that this man was going to veto a bill so that he can get Section 230 added. Right. That just tells you, and that's the leverage he thought he had to be able to make that happen. So that in itself should make everyone's eyelids go out, right? Like, whoa, like that should be like a shocker. Like, that's some big deal that he would go that far. If you understand politics and understand, like, this was the only congressional veto against him, and it was because of Section 230.
Right.
So when you see other people in his party still arguing the Section 230 argument, you understand that they have a whole different track that they're after. Now, my opinion about this is that I think that there are things that we can do with Section 230 in place. Like I said, one of the best experts on this is Daniel Citron, who's testified before Congress about the ways in which she thinks it can be done. I think there are very smart people who are working on this in different ways. I do think I always worry about the fact that if we open up the can of worms of Section 230, then this other part we'll have more of a problem with than the like. I do think that's a question about where we are as a country at a certain point, because I think we're going to be way more divided. So getting some kind of decent Section 230, bill passed, I'm not seeing it. It in my opinion, in terms of it helping American citizens.
Right. Yeah. Section 230 is this bill. I mean, I'm not an expert on what could be fixed, but as is, I mean, it is the reason why we're able to basically post on these platforms in real time, because it basically protects these platforms from lawsuits based on what third parties,
what we say,
for example, the users, right, say, which makes sense. I mean, obviously,
if you think about it, it's logical. It's not that far off. So so for others who don't understand Section 230 in the context for these platforms, is that the way if the argument is Facebook a publisher, a media outlet, or is it something else? And so all of these platforms have basically said that they are their content is user generated, which means that you are producing the content, they're not producing it, which is why they also get really nervous about curating any content, i.e. content moderation, because then they're dictating and they're trying to say if it's really user generated content, that's the argument. If it's really user generated content, then you should not be touching anybody's content, which is just another disingenuous argument. It's one thing to say, we're allowing people to speak and we're not going to dictate their speech. It's another thing to say we're allowing people to speak, but we're also going to allow death threats, incitement to violence, and hate speech, and images of child porn, which can't be done.
Right.
And
Section
and
230 doesn't cover that. Like, you still have to, the platforms still have to, they have a reasonable amount of time to take that stuff down, because Section 230 says that obviously it's not going to cover your,
right.
these companies' asses to post illegal stuff. It just gives them an opportunity to remove it. But I'm glad you brought that up too, because in here, when I mean it, I'm talking about whether they're a publisher or a platform or or a media company. And whenever this conversation comes up, this is my personal belief on these things. I mean, obviously, again, with things that are clearly illegal, those things need to be taken down. But to me, when conservatives say they want this great big free speech platform that anyone's allowed to say whatever they want as long as it's legal, and the platforms shouldn't do anything about it. I mean, if that site existed, if there was some sort of Wild West free-for-all site, it possibly could work if the company didn't put their thumb on the scale like every other company that's existed that has a platform does this. And what I mean is that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all these companies, when they see content getting engagement, they promote it. This content doesn't gain this following organically on its own. Now, we discuss organic and paid advertising online, organic as like, oh, you didn't pay for it. But no, nothing really is organic in terms of how it gets out there. Like, when you look at the top Facebook posts every day, Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino aren't the most popular pages on Facebook organically. Now, they're not paying for it, but Facebook is promoting this stuff because they live off of making money on this controversial content. Whenever there's engagement, they go, oh, we need to show this to more people who like this sort of content. And I mean, that fictional website I mentioned that doesn't put its fingers on the scale, like, you wouldn't be going down a rabbit hole because just because someone watches a Ben Shapiro video doesn't mean they'd be shown an Alex Jones video followed by Donald Trump's latest campaign video. I mean, that's what these platforms did. And they've created this monster where there is no going back. You could never have this fictional platform I just made up that, that didn't put its finger on the scale, because once it's done, it's done.
Well, there's been some that's popped up. They have not been successful, like i.e. Parler and others, but okay.
Well, Parler does. If you look at if you go to their site, the first thing you see on their website, when you're not following a single person, are people they want you to follow and watch and listen to. Like Dan.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Like there's still suggestions. They're suggesting people to you.
Right. Like
that's what you mean.
Like if you just had like an open like WordPress platform, obviously that's why WordPress is considered a social media platform, because it didn't blow up that way. But like, if, and I'm sure there's some terrible stuff you could find on WordPress.com, but because it wasn't suggested to the broader public, i.e. wasn't discoverable beyond maybe a few hundred people who went out of their way to find this stuff in the first place, it didn't really cause a problem. It didn't cause a public crisis. It didn't cause people to die or, at least at a scale that would be worrisome and problematic. So what I'm saying is that like these companies do sort of test Section 230 when they promote this content. Like I said, Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino, the world is not clamoring for Ben Shapiro's latest takes. It just so happens that enough people on Facebook engaged with content that they felt would be adjacent to Ben Shapiro's content, recommended it to all those people, and over the years, Facebook's accumulated all those types of people on their platform due to those suggestions driving people there, and now we're left with the top people on their platform being Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro.
So I get that. I see what you're saying in terms of like the scale thing. I think that recommendations is something that people operate from in the sense of like well, if I go down this path, I get recommended this. I mean, sometimes I get recommended people. I don't even know why I'm being recommended. Like, I didn't engage with them. I don't know, where, like, I don't even think I engaged with content. Um, but I do think that that was part of the original model because I think it was based on the ad model. And I think that that's the thing that we're probably talking about. I don't think it's recommendations, so to speak, in terms of, um, this is hard, this is content that's getting a whole, in the beginning with Facebook, like one of the things that used to happen to me because I was a girl was that the things that got recommended to me was anything that was about a girl dating, getting married, and and um what's weight loss or something along those lines, right? Like they were taking certain parts of, which is what they do in the profiles, that they can figure out how to, send ads your way. And I think that level of what they took that level and splashed it into the content level, and that's what we're seeing. I don't think it's exactly the thumb of the scale that way. And I think that if we argue the question with them, which we don't talk a lot about, is that if we actually dug deeper in the ad model piece of this, which is where they get most of their money, that's the conversation we really need to be having. Because it's like we keep jumping over like the political ad conversation, right? When several organizations tried to get companies to stop paying for ads on the platform for a little while. I think it was like for June or July of last year, if I'm not mistaken. That Facebook was like, well, it's not that big of a deal, and these people will come back. I honestly think if we had a better sense of what that ad model was, we would know why these recommendations are happening this way. Because I believe personally it's more based on that ad model, which is the original model, than it is anything else.
Oh, for sure. That is totally why they do it. Like they don't really care that like, oh, I saw that you're a big fan of Chris Hayes' MSNBC show. We really want to recommend that you check out The Young Turks because we care about what you want. No, of course not. It's totally about, oh, these people are on our platform. They keep interacting with this one thing. Eventually, they'll get tired of that one thing or whatever. We need to keep recommending them new things that are like the thing that we know they like. Mm-hmm. So they stay on here and keep engaging. And while they're doing all this, we keep raking in ad revenue because we're showing them ads throughout this whole time period.
Ad revenue and data mining. That's the business model conversation that the oversight board is not focused on. That's the other part of the conversation. And to me, sometimes they were deflected on these other pieces. Sorry, that we're not having a conversation where we should be focusing on.
Right. And so let's we went into this great conversation about all these different tech, big tech issues, but more broadly. But let's now talk about how the idea that the oversight.
Time flies when we talk about stuff like this, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah. I want to, I almost want to say when we're having fun, and we are, but I think the conversation, the topics of the conversation aren't really all that. Woo! Yeah, we're having a great time. But it is really interesting because I think we are in this area now where we are talking about well, not us obviously specifically. We just talked about the broader topic, but the national conversation is so focused on people like Trump and other big personalities that they do lose sight of how these policies affect everybody more broadly. Especially like you mentioned before with your own experience. And, when Trump went after Black Lives Matter protesters and Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that language that clearly was a dog whistle has no history of being a dog whistle. I mean, it's like they don't quite. I mean, with Zuckerberg, when he says something like that, I don't know. Like, to me, it's possible. It would not surprise me that he truly is completely oblivious to those issues. But because I don't think, I don't think he's that in touch with people, to be honest. I think when you're that wealthy at such a young age, you completely lose sight of what normal everyday people think and what they go through. I'm not giving him a pass by far. I'm just saying it wouldn't be crazy to me that it never even crossed his mind. I'm sure people have said something to him about this stuff in the office, but who knows with him. I know you probably don't agree with that.
I mean, I think he knows. I think there's a difference between knowing and caring. That 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 I think there's a difference between those two conversations. Like knowing, being informed, having the empathy to care, and wanting to do something about it. That's what the question is. Because if he's constantly saying I'm sorry and not much is changing, well, that sorry seems hollow, and I'm not sure that there's empathy that goes behind some of these things, and that's to me the difference. I mean, when you're in a business where people are dying because of something that's happening on your platform, and you still want to just keep the bottom line. We've had plenty of corporations in this country that has done that over and over again. So I'm not saying it's just him. I'm just saying that I think there's a difference between actually knowing and then actually caring.
Right. I agree with that. I think that's the correct assessment of Zuckerberg. Now, how do we go forward now, I think, in terms of what we're looking at? Obviously, we have Facebook has these 6 months. I don't know what they're going to do. It wouldn't surprise me that they pick either or. But I think, what do you, first of all, what do you think, in your opinion, they're going to go with here?
You mean in terms of what they're going to eventually do in terms of the decision?
Yeah.
I think they were always kind of leaning toward letting him back on. That's my overall opinion. But some of the language that I saw and things in between, again, the choices that they made for the selection process, the aspect of like the words that was that was chosen, the term indefinite suspension instead of saying banning, like this is all leaning towards not having to ban him. Now, I still think they're going to take the 6 months. I still think they should have an answer right now. But if it's only based on the case, then I find that problematic. Now, if they have to look at all the years that he was on the platform and deal with it from that perspective, then there's no way he could be let back on.
Right.
With the years of breaking the terms of service and breaking the rules and community standards.
But then they are stuck in that, what we were talking about like an hour ago.
But then having to deal with that. Like, let me just be clear. I don't think they ever want any of their rules clear and cut and dry at all, ever. And they don't want that because then they feel like they're pigeonholed to some of the decisions that they make, and those decisions can be used against them in different situations. So I think they're trying to keep themselves out of trouble in so many ways by kind of leaving things so loose. But it is very clear that even in many of the decisions that they make, it's inconsistent, and everyone has said it's inconsistent. So are you going to follow your own terms of service and community standards, or are you not? To me, that's the bigger question. And if you're not, right, if your oversight board suggests this, and then you still don't, and you still don't do it, and you still don't set down the rules and penalties as it should be applied to every single person on your platform, then to me at that point, I think we're dancing towards closer to regulation, and I know that that's what they're trying to avoid. And to me, that's the reason why they're dancing this line with politicians, because they've been trying to avoid regulation.
Right, and that's the thing too, to be like. These, and you see it online with some of these free speech pundits on social media. They focus on the free speech issue at their hatred of big tech, which we've already discussed makes zero sense. Now, if you really think big tech is this horrible thing, which it certainly is at various points, then the obvious thing to focus on is their power, the monopoly some of these companies, especially Facebook, has over the industry. The fact that Zuckerberg can look at an up-and-coming platform that could possibly give them a run for their money and provide people with a new place to go so they're not beholden to Facebook, and say, this platform is, I don't like it. I don't want them to have the ability to share their links on my platform. And I'm thinking about what came out, what Zuckerberg did to Vine when he saw Vine getting popular, and how it was using basically like your Facebook friends to, say, hey, I'm on Vine and we're friends on Facebook. Check me out. He blocked their ability to do that, which is a huge problem because he specifically targeted Vine to do that. It's not like he was just like, this feature is no longer what we want on Facebook, so no one can do this. No, he specifically targeted a specific competitor that he started doing this. I mean, that's a real problem. And these free speech
No,
warriors.
he's done that across the board. He's target competitors and then tried to come up with their own. I mean, they're trying to come up with their own Clubhouse version right now. I mean, the thing is that that's part of the business model piece that we're still not talking about. But also, again, about this regulation. I mean, some people don't know that, like, they're like, I'm going to leave Facebook and go to Instagram. Well, Instagram is Facebook too.
Right.
So is WhatsApp. It's like, it's not understanding that these platforms are interconnected. And that to me is also very interesting. So I do think that there are people on the Hill that's talking about, breaking up big tech. And I think that comes from multiple sides too. I don't think that's a single-sided issue. I do think that there's a little bit, in my opinion, when you have that level of power and you have that level of ability to lobby, and change legislation, I have a problem with that. I mean, but that's an American standard that I can't, what am I supposed to do with that? Like
Right.
that, we know that many companies lobby for regulation that is beneficial to them or no regulation at all. And so, I've heard him speak about they agree with regulation. Their issue is like, what type of regulation, right? That's they're saying two things at the same time. So I would say, they're worried about an antitrust suit and they're worried about any kind of possible regulation, which is why they're giving weight to certain voices, which is not how the platform should operate. And that to me is where we should be having more conversations.
Right. I mean, if you look at it, like that would be the most effective route to go after Facebook. I mean, just look at this. You mentioned they own WhatsApp and Instagram, and obviously both of those are insanely successful, and those are two insanely successful platforms they own. And they're the only successful platforms they own besides Facebook because they purchased a competitor. Whenever Facebook has gone out of their way to try to just copy someone else and create their own thing, it's failed, again, other than the main Facebook platform, but that's a whole different beast because it was coming up during a totally different time where it was sort of it was an open market there. But their TikTok competitor failed. Facebook Watch was supposed to be their YouTube competitor, and while it is like still chugging along, it's nowhere near YouTube. I mean, their most successful way to compete is just buy other companies, and that's sort of where Instagram and WhatsApp came in.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, for the average person, I guess. What do you think they should watch in terms of how Facebook's upcoming, I guess, policy decisions will affect them? Obviously, they're gonna in the next 6 months they are going to, and I do agree with you. It'll probably be in exactly 6 months. They are going to, and it's funny enough because the Oversight Board is told they can't make any binding policy rules, but in their ultimatum to Facebook, they basically are forcing Facebook to listen to some of their policy suggestions by picking something. Like, how do you think that's going to affect people more broadly? Like, you mentioned earlier, and unfortunately we didn't get too into this, but maybe it's for the best because this really should be its own episode, how these policies affect marginalized groups.
Yes.
And so maybe it's best we didn't talk about it for 10, 20 minutes at the end of this discussion. How do you think that's going to affect them? Because, like we mentioned, those January 6th comments from Trump, it's debatable depending on context and stuff. It's not outright, this stuff should not be on here, like the shooting and the looting comment and his COVID-19 stuff. But what we're going to see probably when Facebook says, okay, here's the guidelines as closely to written in stone as we'll get them. I mean, clearly in my estimation, this is going to affect how people support, protest groups like Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. It's going to affect, the thing about what Facebook does, which is really interesting in terms of the way in which they see themselves, is that they'll use the amplification or the organizing of Black Lives Matter as the good thing that they've that their platform has done, that they have helped elevate the small guy, while at the same time elevating the guys that harm them, right? It's like it's the two-side thing that they constantly do. So when I think about their policies, I think about the ways in which they typically say, here's the way that I feel like they operate in terms of these conversations on policy. They look at policy from either politicians' legislation side versus civil rights. And to me, I feel like, again, the same way that I feel about the free speech argument up against safety, right? Those two things should not be next to each other, right? But when you think about some of the policies that Facebook looks at, they are concerned about like what politicians are going to say. So even some of their current standards of political ads, they are basically saying that politicians' campaigns, in terms of running for office and their political ads, is the same as the group of people who are trying to get citizens out to vote. They're not equal.
Right.
There's a completely different power dynamic.
Right.
So when I think about the way they institute policies, that's what I see. Because there should not be some phase that there's a line equal between these two things. Trying to get people out to vote is a basic principle, an American principle. Not everybody should be running for office, and not everyone who's running for office should have an opportunity to run whatever ads they want, even with disinformation, no matter who they are.
Right.
But that is a different argument, and it should not be balanced with the people who are working to get out the vote. Getting out the vote is completely different. The getting out the vote is not about a politician.
Right.
It's not connected to politicians. It's about every right of an American. Every American should have is the right to vote. So that should not be something that has to be party affiliated, but more importantly, should not be campaign affiliated.
Right. Right.
And so when I see what Facebook does in terms of these policies, that's the balance I see, and it's an imbalance. It's not equal.
Right. You know, I'm so glad you brought up the political campaign advertising issue they had, because I had forgotten about it, but I even covered it too when it was going on. It was so, even when it comes to that policy, they got it completely backwards, where they were like, listen, if you were going to post something that was clearly misinformation on our platform, we wouldn't allow it. Voting misinformation, we wouldn't allow it. But if you're a politician and you're paying for it, we'll let it. That's like the reverse of what I think most other companies would say. Obviously you wouldn't want it on either, but I could see a company saying, listen, you organically post it, we're not taking money for it, so we'll let it slide. But we are not going to make money off of these terrible lies you're spreading. They were saying, listen, you can't post it for free, but if you pay us, you can. It was the most baffling thing ever.
Exactly. It was exactly the point. And then they used the whole well, everyone needs to know what politicians are actually saying. Well, that's cover. It's a complete opposite. And again, if users can't spread, voting disinformation, and we have a whole campaign on this. So let me plug my campaign, which you see the logo on the back. It's called Stop Digital Vote Suppression. If you're spreading disinformation and specifically digital voter suppression, tactics, that should be something that should be an equal playing field conversation. Nobody should be doing it, right? But if you're saying to me that a politician running a campaign, whether he's in office, or trying to get into office, that somehow you're not going to check. You're not going to check the ad, and two, you're fine with it because you're making money off of it. Well, you still tell me your ad model is still more important. That's what I hear.
Right.
Like the thing that we need to target is the thing that you still letting go, because there's no way that you should allow. I mean, and just think about it. That after the fact that they got taken by Russia with rubles, with political ads, and somehow they're like, oh, we're just not going to all of a sudden you're not going to monitor it, particularly when it's American politicians. Like, that sounds a little bit odd.
Right.
Like, logically, as a decision, that doesn't really add up.
Right. Yeah, they are really constantly coming up with the worst worst way to solve something. It's just I just still can't get over it. Like, a news organization can have a politician on the show and show their ad in order to call them out, hold their feet to the fire, discuss the contents of it. But that same network can say, we are not going to take your money to air this. Like,
Right.
it was just so like
They
bizarre.
get to pick and choose which
Yeah.
ads they accept. Let's
Right.
just be honest. And even sometimes even they are a little bit sketchy about which ones they accept, right? But there is also, by the way, there's also some level of legislation about those ads and that placement. That part's true, which is why there has been some legislation about honest ads that Amy Klobuchar and a couple others, I think Mark Warner, was trying to introduce over this. That was last year. I haven't seen it for this Congress. I'm sorry, the last Congress. I don't think I've seen it come back up for this Congress. But that's why they were trying to get at that, because they wanted to have a sense of who's paying for these ads, where's the money coming from, and you have to disclose that when you're doing TV ads. You don't have to disclose that here. And to me, that's another example. Like, that's another ad conversation that we could have. But that's, but when you ask me about policies, I haven't seen them choose a policy that would help all users. They're choosing policies that only help certain users, is in my opinion. And that's going to be the standard that goes forward. So I don't see why they wouldn't put him back on. And unless, for everyone to know, like, when he was removed from Twitter and both Facebook, 70% of the disinformation, stream dropped, right? Disinformation, not just content stream, but disinformation. And that should be like another bell that goes off. But like, I know people won't get that because they won't understand that this man was not telling the truth the entire time, even though he was sitting in the Oval Office. And it was driving me crazy to see media constantly airing his lies. It was like, stop airing that lies. Like you want to counter it after it's aired? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're allowing the disinformation to spread and then figuring out like, oh, we need to take this person off the platform because they're problematic after they've grown a following and spread the disinformation first, that doesn't make any sense. Again, I was deplatformed for talking about diversity in tech, right? So it's like, you're picking and choosing which content is acceptable, and that part's also clear. But the last thing I want to say is that this concept that somehow his speech is being taken from him. He's sitting in the Oval. He gets to say whatever he wants.
Well, he was sitting in the Oval. All right.
I'm sorry, he was. When this ruling came down, that wasn't changing it still doesn't change his ability to speak. He's still putting out statements. How is it stopping him from putting out his statements?
Right. Well, yeah. You'll see it all the time. Fox News will go, the president's speech is being censored, and he's unable to talk to his followers and his people on Facebook and Twitter, and his communication is completely cut off. Coming up next, we'll talk to the president live on national TV to get his thoughts. I mean,
I'm sorry, he's talking.
Right. I mean, he's got plenty. I mean, he could literally. I mean, former president of the United States, already was, regardless of exactly how much money he had, already was obscenely wealthy. He could easily start his own platform and say whatever the hell he wants.
We might have to question how obscenely wealthy he really was. Those taxes being revealed. Like, there's some reasons why he chose to do certain things while he was in office, and I'm not sure it has everything to do with him being extremely wealthy.
Right. Well, I come from the belief that there are certain people who reach a status of elite, and once they reach that status, they can lose all their money, but everyone around them will keep their lifestyle floating. Like, the very rich will never get back down to he could lose all of his money, and it's not like all of a sudden we'll be laughing at Trump living in squalor or something, because he's just.
You think so?
That's just how it is. That's just how it is. At least that's my take on things. But This was truly a fantastic. I was joking before about how it's not really fun, but it really was a fun conversation. Thank you so much, Shireen Mitchell, founder of Stop Online Violence Against Women and member of the Real Facebook Oversight Board. Now, why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you and where they can catch your work?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for letting me do that. So you can go to our website, which is stoponlinevaw.com. Stoponlinevaw.com. You can also, if you want to learn about our project, go to votersuppression.net, so you can see what our project is there. But you can find me anywhere online as Digital Sister. I'm the original Digital Sister. So Digital Sister with an A, DIGITALSISTA. And you can find me just about every platform that exists, because I always go on the platforms early to at least get my name. So,
Right.
Because I'm the original and I gotta keep it. So I enjoyed this conversation. You can probably see some of the content from the Real Facebook Oversight Board as well there on that site. We're going to keep plugging away at this and trying to make a difference. And the work that we do is to try to make a difference in terms of elections with our digital voter suppression project. So, keep us, check us out and help spread the word.
Thank you so much, Shirley. I will. I'll be monitoring especially what the take is in 6 months when we find out exactly what Facebook decides. Hope you'll come on again in the future. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great night.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the second half of the show. There's a lot more coming up. We've got videos that are truly you'll want to stick around for. I have some clips for you that, you've probably heard about what's going on in Arizona with this audit, but I don't think you are quite aware of how bizarre this audit is. For those of you who are out of the loop, I'll explain it all to you in the second half of the show. That second half of the show, you can stick around if you're watching on the live stream. Otherwise, you could catch the replay by becoming a patron at patreon.com/MattBinder. That's how you could support this show. That's patreon.com/MattBinder. Show is growing slowly but surely. That's what I wanted to say. Not shortly but slowly. That doesn't make any sense. And I want to give a shout out to some of the people who became patrons over this last. Where is this? Hold on one second. Let me pull this up. This last week, since we did a show last Thursday. And those people are. It's going. My computer is frozen. Here we go. Tyler S, George R, Frank K, Jonathan P, and Melbo. Thank you so much for supporting the show and becoming patrons. Could not do this show without my patrons. You can also support this show by subscribing at youtube.com/MattBinder. You can also follow the show at twitch.tv/MattBinder. The show is simulcast, so you can watch it on either platform. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and wherever you are on social media. Usually I'm at Matt Binder. If not, just search Matt Binder and I will most definitely come up. What else? Oh, doomedcast.com for the podcast version of the show. For you audiophiles who prefer listening to the show on the go instead of watching the video version of the show, you could listen on Apple Podcasts /iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now, ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? You can leave a review for this show by going to ratethispodcast.com/doomed. That's ratethispodcast.com/doomed. And what will happen is it will present you, this link will present you with a number of apps where you can leave a review for the show. Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Castbox. They're adding more as we speak, but those are the ones that are up there now. And that way you can easily go, click any of these links, and be taken right to the show page on those platforms. You can click the star rating, leave a written review. We broke 300 reviews on Apple Podcasts. I asked you guys to help me do it. You guys pulled through. Thank you so much for doing that. But now we move on to the next goal of those 400 reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're already on the way there. We're above 300. We're not even at 300 exactly. We're a few above it. So do that if you can. Those are great ways to support this show. If you cannot do so monetarily, I completely understand if that's the case. Don't worry about it. But if you can support the show financially, once again, I implore you, patreon.com/MattBinder. That's sort of how I rank how the show is going. When a few people have to leave the patron, I sort of go, oh man, this is a bad week. And then when a few people support the Patreon, all of a sudden I'm like, this show is going places. I'm feeling really good and psyched about this. The Patreon really swings my mood all over the place. So no pressure. Anyway, I'm going to take a extremely quick break. And if you're sticking around in the live stream, you can call into the show, Doomed Live on Skype. I will certainly set up Discord and other ways to call into the show. I'm also looking into how to set up, I just got Twitter Spaces, that Twitter audio conversation feature. It just got rolled out into my account. I'm looking into ways how I could use it on this show, so you guys can just jump into a Twitter space and we can discuss on there. Maybe it's a separate thing altogether. I don't know. I'm looking into it, seeing how I could use it with you guys. Also, if you are a patron, I am testing out a platform in this next week or two where we will be doing a patron-only sort of hangout in the coming weeks. I'm going to test it out, make sure it's good for what I want to do with it. It basically would allow us all on a single video feed. We would see everybody. It'll be fun, and we could talk about whatever you want. It doesn't have to be even in the realm of the show. It could be we could chit chat like old buddies, even though we're not. So that's it. I think that's everything for now. And stick around if you're on the live stream. More is coming up. Otherwise, I will see you all next time on Doomed. All right, we are back on the show. Hello, everybody. The Skype is now up. I am taking calls. Type in Doomed Live. I think technically, Doomed Live _1 is the YouTube is the Skype name, but type Doomed Live, it'll come up. Hold on. Zoe just told me to check out the the Discord for a surprise, and she's also making fun of me for saying what I said. Wow, I get the feeling of having an old buddy for only $4.99 a month. It's actually $5. Get it right, Zoe. Come on. Oh, we got a call. Hello. Is this Renee? Was that in the was that in the Oh wait, hold on. I didn't bring you up on the feed. One second.
Okay.
Okay, now you can say what you just said. Who are you shouting out?
Tom Mayer, who commented underneath, what a weird and awkward guy.
It's true. You're a weird and awkward guy, Renee. But
Aren't
uh,
we all
yeah,
in this game of life?
right. I mean, we all. I mean, have you seen what people say about me online, buddy? I mean,
I
please.
mean, we grew up in New York. It's kind of like a point of pride, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, two things. That thing about like what you was saying, your interviewee was saying about like the popularization of candidacy, like of politics and all that. That it's kind of like different between like pushing the vote and then regards the candidate and all that. That's coming like to a head over here because we have like various candidates as delegates in order to push this new constitution that we have to redact. And it's basically everybody's coming, how shall we say, like out into the limelight. Like I've seen like people use like memes and things like that, like dressing up as like Jedi and such to promote their candidacy
All right.
and the advertisements. And of course, the same people that were opposed to the whole thing about a new constitution or pushing for their candidacy on the extreme right.
All right.
And well, I guess the other thing is the big thing now is as I commented in the super chat, Cali, Colombia.
Ah, the super chat. That's what I forgot to mention on the first half.
Well, that's why I'm here. That's why
Well, a little bit late, buddy.
I
I will.
mean,
I
I
will.
got in
Let
as
me
soon as
shout
I
it out.
could.
Let me shout it out now. Of course, and most of these super chats are from Renee. Amazing. You can.
So you can tip your editor.
You can.
There
Right.
you go.
Right. You. Oh, right. I will make sure to give him a shout out.
Yeah,
And
ice cream at least.
right. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's been a big help. I can't thank him enough, really. Um, well, I mean, I can eventually, but as of now, I can't thank him enough. But yeah, you can support this show also via super chat if you're watching live.
Take it from me.
You could drop a super chat, and I will be sure to read your question, comment, whatever on this show.
I
Uh,
can quit when I want to.
right, right. But Renee, is there anything else you wanted to mention before?
Oh no, the basically that of Colombia and all that. That's super serious, and hopefully you can get a guest on. I'll try to see if I can find anybody from Cali, Colombia.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I haven't had an international show on like foreign affairs in quite a while, so that should be coming up
Yeah,
on one of the future
especially
shows.
if it can tie into Facebook
Oh,
back
right,
again, since of like of all the shenanigans regarding bots and things like
all
that,
right, and we can never get enough.
and
We never get enough
and politician and
Facebook on this
politicians
show.
like building themselves up.
Right. All right, Renee. Thank you for the call. I want to read some of your super chats now because I don't want to. I don't want to forget them. So I will.
Yeah, don't get anybody overdosed on me though. So if you
Well,
want to censor anything,
that's too bad. They're gonna get more Renee right now. Thanks for the call, Renee.
okay, bye.
Take care, buddy. All right, let's read some of these super chats. Renee, we're going to need the Phantom Zone for Trump. Resiste Cali, Colombia. By YouTuber Max Fosh is running for Lord Mayor of London, not Ontario, and he shouted out Zoe. Are there international rules that apply, like in Denmark with the Hague regarding human rights? Are you talking about Facebook? I mean, no, because it's no. Uh, mm. Isn't Facebook pushing some sort of survey regarding who's in favor of pedophilia? Maybe I should have kept you on when I read that one because I have no idea what you're talking about there. And Renee says, having fun on Doomed grabs a liar. Glad you're having fun, Renee. That's the whole point of this. Gotta have fun. Gotta have good times. Otherwise, I mean, why bother? Why bother? We need more fun in life, right? Let's go to first of all. Let's go to this clip. I mean, sometimes there are. Hold on, getting a what is hold on, what did Zoe want me to see in the Discord? What is this? Oh, PragerU has a kid show. Yeah, I know about this. I have never talked about it on this show, but I've come across it before. Zoe says, I think Ezra would really dig this great educational content. And you wouldn't have seen this if you weren't on the Discord. Patron members, if you are not in the Discord yet, reach out to me on Patreon. I will get you a link so you could join the Discord. Just had two people, one person just now and one person in the last day or two, reach out to me saying that the link expired. If that happens, send me a message. I will get you a link immediately. Discord's starting to, it's not like bustling. It's not like some constant flow, but during certain parts of the week, for this show, for example, or just randomly throughout, we got people talking and hanging out in there. And I think it'll get more popping as time goes on. In fact, I gave an offer earlier on the show today, earlier in the Discord chat today. I said, shh, don't tell anyone I'm doing this. But if you want to call into the Majority Report today, while I'm co-hosting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I will put you in the front of the phone lines. Just tell me your area code. Two people gave me laughing emojis, and 0 people took me up on that offer. Nobody called in wanting to come to the front of the show, phone lines on the show. But that's okay. You don't have to. And if you missed out earlier today because you were working or something, now is the time to call in. But before we take any more calls, I got to play this quick clip. There's a few clips I want to play you, but I got to play this quick clip first of all. Because you might have seen this. You might have not. But it's pretty funny. On Fox News this week, Brian Kilmeade had a few young kids on to discuss, I guess, what's going on in the country. Want to get some hot takes from the future of America, and he didn't have such a good time talking to, I should say, the future of this great country. Let's take a listen to how that conversation went right now.
How close are you to getting back in the room? What do you miss most about not being in school?
I miss most, obviously, seeing my friends and all the after-school activities that I've done. And I think that we're very, very close getting back to school. And I think that the way that our new president is handling things is a very good way. And we would not have gone to this if it were still the last president.
Really? That's hard to believe because the last president was saying, I want every kid back in school. So, Lily, for you, what is your hope knowing the numbers are going down and the governor might be opening up?
How do you have that interaction, that back and forth with a sixth grader, right? How do you have that interaction with a sixth grader? I mean, really? Oh, really? Oh, really? The old President Trump, wouldn't have done all this because he was saying he wanted you back in school, you little shithead. I mean, literally, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? How do you do that and not realize that you come off looking like a huge dunce, arguing with a sixth grader? I mean, the kid's right, but Biden deserves a lot of criticism for a lot of things. The administration does as a whole, but when it comes to handling COVID and the vaccines and reopening, haven't done such a bad job. I can't imagine the Trump administration doing anything even close, especially being that apparently they didn't even have a vaccine distribution plan in late January before the Biden's inauguration. But way to yell at a sixth grader, buddy. And let's go to another clip here. What do I want to play next? We got some good stuff. We got some. Oh, here's a good one. Okay, so you all know that there are two right-wing cable news channels that are actually further right than Fox News. And by further right, I mean even more conspiratorial, even bigger disseminators of disinformation. And that's OAN and Newsmax. But even this is a bit too far out there, I thought, for Newsmax, at least comparative to all the other things they've put out there. So Newsmax had an average Minnesotan. I think the guy's from Minnesota. Just an average American. Let's go with that, just to be safe, just to be sure, on the show. A small business owner, I believe he is. And this guy has a really big Trump flag, which I guess is enough to get you on Newsmax. I don't think you can even guess where this conversation's going. But let's take a watch right now. Today. Of course I did that. Let's try that again. Let's take a watch right now. And now it's without sound. Let me try one more time. Let's take a watch right now.
All right, last month we spoke to a Minnesota business owner who refused to take down a massive Trump 2020 flag that violated his city's ordinance. Jay Johnson is facing increased fines and says not even jail time can stop him from flying this huge flag over his construction business. Just this weekend, he doubled down, put up an even bigger flag. This one is 40 by 60. It is 900 square feet bigger than his previous flag.
For those of you listening to the podcast right now, the flag is a huge, giant flag. He just told you the dimensions, the Newsmax hosted. But he's not telling you quite yet what it says. It says Trump, JFK Jr., 2024, where we go one, we go all. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this show, because I've told you a bazillion times, where we go one, I've covered it a bazillion times. Where we go one, we go all is the QAnon slogan / catchphrase. And JFK Jr. Is the deceased son of JFK, who QAnon thinks is still alive and secretly a huge mega Trump supporter, and will one day unveil himself to be alive and to be a huge mega Trump supporter and become Donald Trump's running mate. Now, they thought this was going to happen for 2020, and Trump was going to kick Pence off of the ticket, I should say. Of course, this didn't happen. I guess sane people wouldn't believe this to begin with, but if you were starting to come to reality, you would assume that maybe this isn't going to happen anymore. But clearly, that's not happening. They're just kicking this can further down the road. JFK Jr. clearly still alive to them, and he will eventually be Trump's vice president on this ticket when Trump runs again in 2024. Let's continue with this clip, though.
Thing's like 3,600 square feet. It is huge, the size of the footprint of a house. He's also flying it proudly in the small city of Buffalo, Minnesota, which I guess is technically a blue state. Makes it even funnier. Jay Johnson joins us now. Jay, great to have you back. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's a bigger flag, slightly different than the last one. It has the names Trump and JFK Jr. on it. Is that right? With the slogan, "Where we go one, we go all." Explain this flag.
I refuse to believe that this Newsmax guy does not know. He's feigning ignorance here. Oh, what does this JFK Jr. mention? And where we go one, where we go all. What is this? I find it hard to believe that a Newsmax host does not know what's going on here. But clearly, I guess he realizes that this is even too far out there for even Newsmax. So they got to pretend they don't know what it is. So they can't be called out for letting this stuff on the show with the knowledge of what it is. But let's continue because it's funny.
Well, Trump to me is the Lone Ranger, and the Lone Ranger needs a guy by his side, and that's JFK. And so I decided to put it up and leave the people think about what's going on.
Sure. I mean, how do you bring JFK into this? Explain that a little bit to me.
Yes, please explain this to him.
Well, JFK and Donald Trump were friends, and
they were. I don't know if they were actually friends. They ran in the same elite Manhattan circles, obviously, back when Trump was a Democrat. This was like in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to call that friends in the year 2021, I guess you could.
I don't know if you know this, but Donald Trump is president.
Yeah. And
Donald Trump needs a vice president. So when the time was right, I bring him out. And he's your new vice president.
There you go. All right.
Right. There's one problem here, though, that the Newsmax host didn't mention. Just might put a little I don't know, a little roadblock in the way of JFK Jr. being Trump's VP. He died in a plane crash in 1999. The Newsmax host never mentions that small, perhaps important fact that this guy has a flag up where Donald Trump's vice president is someone who died 21 years ago. I guess something maybe you should have mentioned. But again, you can do that, I guess, if you think he's still alive, but then you would have to know the QAnon lore, which they claim not to know, right? He feigned ignorance. But by the way, if you're unfamiliar, you haven't caught previous episodes of the show, this is actually the guy that QAnon believes is JFK Jr. in disguise. This is a Trump supporter by the name of Vincent Fusca. He was often seen at Trump rallies, and they think he's like the spitting image of JFK Jr. I mean, I guess I should pull up what JFK Jr. looks like if you're unfamiliar, so you can see exactly where they get this from. I mean, if you ask me, the resemblance is simply uncanny. I would never have thought JFK Jr. was dead if I saw Vinny Fusca at a Trump rally. I mean, look at that. The spitting image. I mean, ladies, I know they say men get better looks. Men's looks get better with age, right? What about that JFK Jr. ending up looking like Vinny Fusca over there? That's oof. Though those looks age like a fine wine, right? Right, ladies? And for you men out there too, who were big fans of JFK Jr. back in the day, maybe had a crush yourself on JFK Jr. Isn't he looking sexier than ever? Oh my God, Christ Almighty! What are we doing? Where is the human? Where are human beings going? Really? What are we doing here? Misha said it's the same picture. Right, no difference. No difference at all. Abby says he's wearing those glasses with the fake nose. He is wearing those very thick glasses that usually come attached to the fake nose. Right. Comp says, Binder, any thoughts on the upcoming New York case about concealed guns the Supreme Court is taking up in October? I'm unfamiliar with the case, so I can't comment, but I will look it up. I will make a note now. What was it? Concealed guns, New York Supreme Court. I'll look it up. It's hard to tell now. You know what I mean? It's hard to tell where the Supreme Court's going to lie on those things. Let's now go to, let's go back to the, I got some more clips. Are there any callers on the line? Oh, I missed someone before. Let me let them know they can call back in. You could call into the show, Doom's Live on Skype. Let's see what else. Oh, some people in the chat on YouTube were even baffled by the JFK Jr. thing, which is good. It means this show has grown and people missed those previous episodes on the JFK Jr. QAnon conspiracy theory. Let's see. I got this Arizona stuff. I'm saving this for the end. Because honestly, I don't think I could top this. Anything on this show is going to top this crazy Arizona audit story. Let's do this. So let's do this. So if you aren't aware, Caitlyn Jenner is running to become the mayor. What am I saying? Let me reset this. Whew. Wake up, Matt. Let's do this. Caitlyn Jenner is running to become the governor of California in the race to recall Gavin Newsom. And she did her first major interview since she's launched her campaign, which, by the way, if you're wondering what party she's running as Republican, obviously. And who is running her campaign? Why, none other than Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Brad Parscale. The guy who had a complete meltdown at his home. And the cops came and he was tackled to the floor in his skivvies. And it was all caught on camera. But anyway, so Caitlyn Jenner's first interview since launching her campaign was with Sean Hannity. And here is what she had to say in that interview with Hannity.
California. My friends are leaving California. Actually, were at my hangar. The guy across right over from me, he was packing up his hangar. I said, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I'm moving to Sedona, Arizona. I can't take it here anymore. I can't walk down the streets and see the homeless." I don't want to leave. Okay, either I stay and fight or I get out of here.
So there's Caitlyn Jenner in her first appearance since her first TV appearance, I should say, her first major TV appearance since launching her campaign to run as the governor of California in the recall of Gavin Newsom. And her major concern, the reason she's running ostensibly, is because the guy who owns her hangar left California for Arizona. And the reason he left is because he saw homeless people, and she needs to stay and fight. I guess for the hangar owners out there in California. Now, to be completely clear here, she's talking about like the guy who runs the place where her private plane takes off. The guy who owns the airplane hangar. She has been thrust into this position to run because she's got to fight for people like that. I mean, really what she's saying, like, obviously against the horrible homeless people out there, how many homeless people can you house in a space the size of an airport hangar, or an airplane hangar? I wonder. But what she's saying is she's running because of issues directly affecting her. And, she is a trans woman. So you think maybe she didn't run on trans issues. And there's another clip from this interview going around. We played it earlier on the Majority Report when I was on there, where she basically says she's running to be a role model for trans people out there. And then at the same time, she says that trans girls should not be able to play girl sports. Or quite a role model there. But in this clip, the reason I chose to play this is because she's running specifically for herself. I mean, she's not running because she saw people who are homeless during the pandemic, who lost their homes during the pandemic. She's not running because of people fighting evictions due to losing their jobs during the pandemic. She's not fighting for people who lost their jobs during the pandemic, not fighting for people who lost family members during the pandemic, who had health issues during the pandemic. She's not fighting for those people. She was compelled to run when the guy who runs her local airplane hangar left because he was disgusted by homeless people. And, that's really what drives a conservative to run for office. I mean, it drives them a lot for a lot of things. Like whenever a right-winger, whenever a Republican suddenly cares about a social justice issue, it's usually because finally it's affected them. When a Republican congressman who's fought against LGBT rights his entire career suddenly comes out late in life and says, I support same-sex marriage now, well after the fight for that has been over, it's because 99.999% of the time, a family member, usually someone very close to them, like a parent or a son or daughter, has come out as a member of the LGBT community. And that's really everything that drives them. They don't care about you. They don't care about any issue until it affects them, and then they care. And, Caitlyn Jenner, I showed this one clip. That's a great example of a current active campaign portraying, highlighting that very thing. But it's not the only one either. I mean, I've come with more than one example. Another great example of that dynamic is this person. The one and only Laura Loomer, who's once again running for Congress in Florida after losing horribly last time around. She recently was doing a speech for her campaign, which will surely fail again. But here's what she had to say. It was one of her issues that she felt the need to highlight. This is why she's running.
This is not just about free speech. This is about civil rights. The act of being deplatformed is a civil rights violation, and free speech is not only the bedrock of our society, but free speech is a civil right. And I'm running for Congress again because I feel so passionately about this issue, and I'm not going to stop until I get into Congress, until I win, to uphold our election integrity and to let people know that it's going to be the American people who pick and choose election winners and losers, not big tech. And when I get to Congress, one of the first things I'm going to do is propose legislation to update our Civil Rights Act to include political affiliation as a protected class.
There you go. There you had it. There's Laura Loomer telling you that she is going to make political affiliation, the party you belong to, the political ideology, you subscribe to, she is going to make that a protected class, just like race and religion and sexual orientation. Because for those of you who are unclear as to why that is such an important issue to her, she's been deplatformed. She has lost her Twitter account, her YouTube account, PayPal. A bunch of platforms have given her the boot for her viewpoints that broke their policy guidelines. And when I mean viewpoints, I mean calls to violence, saying horrible, bigoted things about actual marginalized, protected groups, like people of a certain race or religion, black and brown people, Muslims, particularly when it comes to Laura Loomer. So, yeah, I mean, once again, we see that when it comes down to it, what matters to these right-wingers, it's me. It's all about the individual. Really shouldn't be a surprise, but it's amazing to see complete political campaigns, their lives, by the way, being, put into these campaigns, them fundraising and people donating on basically a platform that is, this happened to me, I'm running for office to better me. Incredible. Let's go to the phones. Just missed this call. Let me let this person know that he can call back in. Once again, you can get your super chats in on youtube.com/MattBinder. If you're watching live, I'll read them. We are headed towards the final clip. I'm going to take a call or two, whatever comes in. It seems like a bunch of people saw. Oh, here we go. Here's that caller. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from? You are on the air.
My name's John Renee. I've called in before. I'm calling from Peoria.
Hey, John from Peoria. How are you doing? What would you like to talk about?
So I was going to call in and talk about the discussion that you had earlier when you hosted the Majority Report in regards to the fight in the NHL. And just mention that in 1977, the same year that Slapshot, the movie, came out, there was also a movie called The Deadliest Season with Michael Moriarty and Meryl Streep, a made-for-TV movie, wherein one of the hockey players, his main character kills someone and he goes on trial for manslaughter. I don't think many people remember that movie. I'm old enough to. So I just wanted to mention that. But the Laura Loomer thing, earlier today, I was a attorney I follow on YouTube presented the case. Laura Loomer sued, if I remember correctly, sued Facebook. It might have been Twitter. And this organization called CARE, which advocates for Muslims to be treated fairly. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but she sued these two people or two entities because she her theory was that they conspired to have her kicked off the platform.
Right. Big Muslim, big Islam.
Yeah. So her theory was that CARE, this Muslim organization, was pulling the strings of Facebook and got her kicked off. So eventually what happened was it looks like first of all, her theory was so full of holes that she first of all couldn't prove that there was this supposed conspiracy, but also when you sign up to like Facebook and Twitter, they basically say, well, we can kick you off for basically anything. So even if there was this conspiracy, I forgot what it's called, but when you try to interfere with someone's contract, but yeah, even if that was true, she still would have lost. But so she had sued actually the local the local chapter of CARE in Florida to avoid having it go to federal court. But the federal court still took it. So that's how she lost. But I didn't know if you knew about this, and it's a pretty interesting case just because of how loony she is.
Right. I feel like I heard of it, but I'm glad you brought it up because it was interesting. It's like, listen, I'm sure they did advocate very publicly to have her, if not her specifically, people like her, banned or action taken against them on the platform. And that's within their right, obviously, to do so. But they didn't pull the strings. And, here's the thing, like, it is so easy on these platforms. Like, these platforms give you so much leeway. It is so easy for her to just, parse her words and get her anti-Muslim views across in a way that would be acceptable by these platforms. Like, I'm not saying that's right, but these platforms do give that leeway. Like,
yeah, it takes a lot to get kicked off.
Yeah, like, she's basically upset that she can't basically call them whatever she called them or advocated for whatever horrible thing to happen to them to happen. And that's what it comes down to. But I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot all about that case. I feel like I heard of it. I definitely, she obviously looks for lawsuits wherever she can find them because it helps her get a little publicity every now and then. But she's really dropped off the face of the planet. And she's got no one to blame for that but herself.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring up those two things. When I heard you mention Laura Loomer, I was like, wait a minute, I just heard about this today. So.
All right. Thanks for calling, John. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
You too.
You know what? That conversation with John made me want to go back and talk a little bit more about that clip because I'm thinking about what I said. Give me a second here to just. All right. Here's the thing about that Laura Loomer clip too. Like, the reason political affiliation, like she said, isn't a protected class is because it doesn't need to be. No one is discriminated against because of their political affiliation. First of all, you don't wear your political affiliation on your sleeve. Like, you could simply not. You can simply go through life, go to businesses, and your political affiliation does not come up. It's not like you sit down at a table and someone goes at a restaurant and like the waitress goes like, you look like a Republican. You look like a Democrat. We don't serve you here. No, it doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. And second of all, she wasn't discriminated against for her political affiliation. She was discriminated against, i.e., fairly booted from a private platform for breaking their guidelines, terms of service, and or policies. She said something horribly bigoted or insightful against a group of people or a specific person, and that platform took action against her for that. So, yeah. Have fun, Laura Loomer. Keep on doing your thing, getting your name out there. I always enjoy hearing good old Loomer in the headlines because it's always something over the top and funny. Like that time she went on Alex Jones' show and cried about being deplatformed and how it ruined her life. And Alex Jones was like, Whoa, lady, you gotta calm down. This is even too over the top for me. Kowalski with a super chat. I think it's Kowalski. Prairie Fire? I think that's you, right? I'm calling into MR next Thursday with a special message. Ooh, we got to wait a whole week now for this this surprise, which, by the way, you can, Kowalski, be sure to DM me on Twitter or message me in the Discord or whatever, your area code, so I know it's you. Although I'm pretty sure I know who you are in the MR system. I'm pretty sure I can tell when I see it. All right, let's get ready to wrap up this show. And by wrap up, I mean I need a good, I don't know how long this is going to take. Maybe 10 minutes minimum to do this clip. So strap in. There's a bunch of clips here. So strap in, get ready. You're about to go on quite the ride here. Hold on, let me get these clips ready. This is gonna be here we go. All right, let me we need this one. We need this one. We need this one. We need this one. Is that it? That's all the clips. All right, we got 4 clips that are part of this one all-encompassing story. Zoe says, I'm all strapped, baby. Hell yeah. Let's do it. All right, let me pull up this here. Sorry, I need to get everything ready for this. This is gonna be this is gonna be a ride. It's gonna be a ride. Get ready for it. Let me get the clip ready. There's that Loomer clip. We don't need that Loomer clip anymore, but we do need these clips. How do I see? The thing is, I'm using this new setup. In fact, I have an even newer setup because I moved the monitor and everything. And I'm working off this new Mac Mini M1. And you might notice that things are a lot smoother when it comes to cutting back and forth from certain things. But I'm still getting used to some other things here. But we're getting it together. All right, here we go. Let me cue this clip up. Okay, we're all queued up. Here we go. So let me fix the hair here. It's gonna be, as you know, my editor, the guy who helps me out, he's gonna be clipping this for a YouTube segment. So I gotta make sure I'm ready to go. And this is gonna be a good one. Here we go. So you might have heard about this audit going on in Arizona, where basically the Republican Congress, state Congress there, the state house in Arizona, is having this audit of the election results in Arizona. You might not know this is happening because, by the way, this is May. I'm recording this on May 6, 2021. The election has been over for, 7 months, give or take. This is, again, an audit for the election results that happened in November 2020, where Arizona turned blue and ended up, I should say, with not only voting for President Joe Biden, but also ended up with 2 Democratic senators, U.S. senators. But obviously the state Senate over there and House are still run by Republicans. And they basically sanctioned an audit. And the details around this audit are really interesting. And what I'm probably going to do is do a full episode on it in the coming weeks. But to give you a summary to set up these clips, the Republicans who wanted this to happen basically think that there was all sorts of shenanigans going on during the race. During the election, I should say. And so they sanctioned this audit, and they hired a company called Cyber Ninjas to conduct this audit. And if you're wondering if Cyber Ninjas are an experienced election auditing outfit, like a bipartisan group without any sort of affiliation, and are doing a job here with mega integrity. Of course they are. They are a legitimate organization. I can't joke with you guys anymore. Of course they're not. Of course they're not. Cyber Ninjas? Please. The Cyber Ninjas organization is owned by a guy named Doug Logan, who has been spreading Stop the Steal propaganda and conspiracies about how Trump had the election stolen from him for months now. This is the organization, the company, the guy they have running this audit to hold up the integrity of our elections. I'm sorry, I couldn't joke anymore. Because, honestly, I probably couldn't make that joke funny compared to what you're about to see, which is going to be the funniest shit you've ever seen in your life. So, let's get to these clips, because if you're wondering how this audit is going, I can tell you right now, it is going absolutely bananas in terms of how batshit crazy it is. You will not believe what you're about to see. And you know what? I queued up this clip, but I should save this for last. This guy, you're going to enjoy this guy. So let's hold this clip for a second. And first, let's play this clip, because this is where it all starts, really. There is a conspiracy going on since the election in November that, and this was one that was really big in Arizona, where basically there were basically a special seal printed on, special stamp, a seal of approval printed on the real, actual official ballots. And obviously, Trump did this because he had a feeling that there would be voter fraud and fake forged ballots, tucked in. I don't know, how they made Carrie win prom queen in the movie Carrie so they could dump the paint on her head when she went up on stage, because Trump is, I guess, Carrie. And so they believe this. And in this audit, to check for the seal, they actually had UV lights. So and you can watch these audits. It's being streamed live. The QAnon folks are obsessed with it. Ron Watkins, son of Jim Watkins, the owner of 8kun. Ron himself was the former administrator of 8kun. And he, of course, is now infamous for that scene in the HBO QAnon documentary where he strongly, accidentally hints that he, in fact, was Q all along. But anyway, Ron Watkins is watching this and spreading conspiracies about this while watching these live streams, and his fans are, of course, eating it up. But basically, OAN was covering it a few weeks ago, and they were covering the UV lights. And you will love who their expert on the matter is, by the way. You will love who their expert on the matter is, by the way. We'll get back to this guy in a second. But here's that OAN segment where they show these auditors, these very serious upholders of American democracy and election integrity, using UV lights to look for a non-existent seal, which Trump secretly put on ballots to ensure that the election wasn't stolen from him. Yet apparently, somehow, according to these guys, it still was. And I should say, full addendum here, it wasn't stolen from him. Here is that clip from OAN, and you will love their expert on the matter.
Of One American News, I'm Shane Althouse. Forensic experts are examining thousands of ballots used in last year's election as part of the election audit in Arizona. According to reports today, experts are using ultraviolet lights to search for ballot watermarks and weed out phony ballots. In addition, auditors have been split into several groups, with some examining mail-in ballots and others inspecting ballot folders, envelopes, and other.
All right, that's another thing. Another conspiracy is if a ballot was dropped off was mailed in, it should not have a fold in it. And if it has a fold in it, it's a fake ballot. It was dropped off there by a Biden apparatchik. Or vice versa, if it was mailed in, but it's an unfolded ballot, there you go. It's not legit. It's nothing they're looking out for. Again, this is all bullshit. It's not real, just conspiracies. But let's go back to this OAN clip, because they got a real experienced election integrity upholder, a guy who's been working on upholding democracy all across the globe. You guys are going to love this. I don't think you could guess in a million zillion years who they got on their show here.
Related items. Democrat Party officials have tried to challenge the audit in court. Meanwhile, mainstream media are trying to downplay or discredit this audit as part of their narrative control.
They've just decided, look, we have to do this for the party. We have to call this illegitimate. They'll never tell you why it's illegitimate. I'm just asking for evidence.
Let me just go back there at the title. Let me just go back there. So for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube and are just listening to the podcast, OAN has on Doug Tenapel to talk about this issue. And Doug Tenapel has been putting up political videos for quite some time. He's become sort of a commentator on YouTube, a YouTuber like myself, you know. But that's not really what he's known for. Like, he doesn't have a big subscriber, but I think he's got like 30,000 YouTube subscribers. Like, you know, usually a guy like this wouldn't get on the show. And that's the thing. His title, they don't even mention that he puts up political commentary videos. That's because Doug Tenapel, and this is the title they gave him, his expertise on the issue, he's actually most known. He's most famous for something completely different, and that's for creating the video game character Earthworm Jim. I shit you not, ladies and gentlemen. The guy who created Earthworm Jim is a pro-Trump supporter who spread Stop the Steal, big lie, election fraud conspiracies. He's been putting up political videos now. And according to OAN, his history as the creator of Earthworm Jim has given him the expertise needed to talk about election fraud. And I mean, listen, if you don't know who Earthworm Jim is, you've definitely seen him before. I mean, I highly doubt you've not seen Earthworm Jim. He was a big video game character in what, like the 90s? I'm familiar with Earthworm Jim. I think I was never the biggest fan of his games, but I think he's certainly a classic video game character. There he is, Earthworm Jim. So, folks, you can rest easy knowing that people like Doug Tenapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim, is fighting hard for the integrity of the U.S. elections. And it doesn't stop there. Oh no, I wish it did. I wish it did. Because, okay, you might be saying to yourself, if you just watched everything I just played, you might be saying to yourself, all right, we got a Arizona election audit for the November 2020 U.S. presidential elections. Because the Republican state house Congress believes, in Arizona, believes that there was election fraud. So they're holding this audit many, many months after the election's over and done with. And we got all these conspiracies I just mentioned to you that they are believing and searching for. At this audit, they have literal people with UV rays looking for non-existent watermarks due to a online conspiracy theory. UV lights, I should say. They got people checking for folds in the ballots because of, again, an unsubstantiated, absolute bullshit, crazy online conspiracy. The whole thing is being overseen by a group, a organization called Code Ninjas. Still can't believe that one, right? Cyber Ninjas. And OAN, in their coverage of everything going on there, has on Doug Tenapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim, for his, right? That's right, the video game character, Earthworm Jim, for his expertise on election integrity. You might be saying, okay, well, how does it get any crazier, Matt? Well, my friends, let me tell you, it certainly does. Because when you got UV lights and you got Earthworm Jim and you got folds and you got a group called Cyber Ninjas run by a Trump supporter who believes the election was stolen from him running this entire audit in the first place, you'll eventually get a conspiracy about bamboo. That's right, bamboo in the fake ballots. Let's listen to John Brakely, one of the auditors for this election audit in Arizona.
The other day at the press conference, you were talking about bamboo. What was that about?
Well, is that there's accusations that 40,000 ballots were flown in.
To Arizona?
Into Arizona, and it was stuffed into the box, okay? And it came from the southeast part of the world, Asia, okay? And what they're doing is to find out if there's bamboo in the paper. That camera right there, that they take a picture of the ballot, they can really look at depth and find out, is it a hand-marked paper ballot? Because it's a 5K camera. You can see the folds in the ballot because 92% of all the ballots here should have been folded because they came in through an envelope, okay? And so they're doing all sorts of testing to prove if it was or wasn't, and that's very important because the only way you can persuade people on changing is having facts, and we're on a mission for facts. And I'm Audit Elections USA, and what we do is not about the right or left. Audit is an acronym. It stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. We've been around
Wait, that acronym, audit, that's not correct.
Not about the right or left. Audit is an acronym. It stands for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. We've been around 17 years.
In elections would make it
all over the country for the last 5 years. I'm litigation in Florida. I've sued in Alabama. I negotiated in Virginia. I sued in Ohio, and I've been in 18 states. Just working elections, and I all started because of the Bernie Sanders election in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. I'm the guy who sued the whole state.
Right. I should mention that, the state GOP party basically runs the election board, and they are allowing this. I think I've been saying that the state House, I think it's actually because the GOP state party runs the election board. That's why they're able to run this and make this happen. But with that aside, bamboo in the papers here, and he was asked further, by the way, to further talk about this bamboo thing. Let's play that clip too. And the acronym is completely wrong because that would be even giving him the pass on not including 4 in there, which people don't usually do. So fine. There's still 2 extra words that he added there that would make the acronym audity, but. I guess when you're talking about bamboo being in the paper, I guess we'll give you the pass there too.
So what does the bamboo, why do you check for
because
bamboo?
They use bamboo in their paper processing.
Who's they?
People in Southeast Asia.
So that you feel like
that's what they say.
40,000 ballots have been.
Yeah, I don't believe any of that. I'm just saying that is part of the mystery that we want to ungaslight people about, and this is a way to do it.
This is part of what you're looking at.
I'm not. They are.
Wow.
I'm here as an observer and a professional in elections for the last 17 years.
That's sure is something. So where's this bamboo thing coming from, you might be asking? I mean, I was asking myself the same thing. This bamboo thing is really out there, right? And you'd be right to think that, and that's because the whole bamboo conspiracy comes from a guy by the name of Jovan Houghton Pulitzer. And this guy is basically a huckster. He goes around portraying himself as some sort of election integrity savant. He also has some other questionable things to his name, such as, well, first of all, he's a former professional treasure hunter. And he invented a device known as a Q-Cat, which, according to The Verge, is widely regarded as one of the worst gadgets ever made. It's a cat-shaped barcode scanner. I don't even know why you'd need that. But anyway, he is convinced that organization Cyber Ninjas, the one run by the Trump sycophant Doug Logan, to work with him. So they've been working together on these this election audit. And if you're wondering what Jovan Houghton Pulitzer says about this sort of stuff, let me play a clip of him.
Well, did you know from a forensic level that you can tell?
First of all, if that ain't the face of a person who you'd absolutely trust with the integrity of your elections, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the guy just oozes trustworthiness, and certainly not like used car salesman, right?
Well, did you know from a forensic level that you can tell absolutely the difference between paper here in the United States or paper that was made in China? There's different formulations, different inks, even different fibers. And on our systems, we're able to tell every one of these. But the bottom line is really simple. Regardless of the side you're on, this is no longer about the president. This is no longer about parties. This is only about you as a citizen. Will your vote count going forward?
Pulitzer. All right, we don't need to hear anything else there. I mean, this is how deep we're getting here in this election audit in Arizona. I mean, it is just a conspiratorial, tentacled monster. I mean, look at the people here who are involved in this. First of all, the idea that I don't know how they make paper in China. Something tells me that yes, it's probably true that historically in China they've used paper made out of bamboo. But I'm also going to assume that in current day, they could get their hands on paper that isn't made with bamboo. And that there probably is specialty paper where you can buy specifically made out of bamboo, and also paper that you can buy that's not made out of bamboo. I mean, China's pretty advanced here. They can certainly do a lot, can't they? Also, if they were going to pull some big old election fraud conspiracy, I think they would be able to get their hands on the proper paper so it would look like the paper that we use here, even going by their crazy backwards logic. But here's something that should really concern you. Now, it's all fun and games to make fun of these guys, and I assure you it really is. But here is where there's a real problem. These guys, that Doug Logan who runs Cyber Ninjas, this Jovan fellow who's spreading these bamboo China election fraud conspiracy theories, that guy Bakley who's overseeing the audit, and talking about bamboo. All the conspiracy theorists with the UV lights down there, checking for creases and folds, they've all got their hands on the actual ballots. Like if you're in Arizona and you voted in like Maricopa County and you cast your ballot, I mean, they can throw it away. They actually have your real ballot. And in this audit they're conducting that's being overseen, it's just Republicans being overseen by other Republicans, overseen by other Republicans with a bunch of, if the Republicans themselves aren't, then you also got the QAnon believers, the conspiratorial people, the MAGA faithful. Like this is who you have involved in this audit. There's no bipartisan body here. And they actually have these ballots. And there is no legitimate organization or governmental body or overseer who is not part of a political party who is looking at all this. Like if you voted for Biden, you voted for whoever in the in Maricopa County, I mean, you should worry about your vote right now, and because they can throw it away. They can say it's bullshit. They can forge it. They could change it. They could literally fucking do whatever they want. And that's these conspiracy theories are wild and crazy. But what I just said was that's the real scary part. The fucking people upholding election integrity, per se, in their view, in their worldview, legitimately have no fucking integrity. So that was it, guys. That was the wild and crazy. I think we're going to do multiple clips out of that one. That was the wild and crazy Arizona audit. We're going to do a full episode on that. I need to get some experts who are probably someone in Arizona covering this sort of stuff. People who are on the ground watching this stuff. I need to get on that. It's crazy. Left is Best says, "Hey Matt, big improvement on the setup. The hiding in the basement look had its charm, but this is much nicer to look at." Thank you. Yeah, and I'm working on more too. Dank. I'm sorry. Sorry, Dank. I saw your comment. That's basically a super clip. I read it. There you go. But that's not the one I meant to read. I got you confused with someone else here. Jess the Sonic Wave with a super chat. Yo, Binder, here's a $5. Dig the show. I am a public school teacher and want to call in and talk about public education during the pandemic. Maybe next week. Absolutely. Let's do it. Call in next week. I will take your call immediately. Just message me on Skype and we'll do it. Renee with a super chat. You left the idiot out of Savant, right? All right, folks. That's the show for today. Gave you another wonderful, nearly 3 hour. I think we're at the 2.5 hour mark, above the 2.5 hour mark. Almost 3 hour show today. Adalbert Red says there are something like 30 species of bamboo, right? And they're checking for all of them. Adalbert. Dank says, sounds like Arizona to me. It's just Florida in the desert. All right. Yeah. I mean, at least they went blue this time around. All right, folks. As always, thank you to my patrons. Show is not possible without you. Oh, during the show, we got a new patron. Let me shout that patron out. John, thank you so much for becoming a patron. Really appreciate it. I think that's the same John who just called in before. Ooh, we had hit 230 230 patrons earlier this week, but it looks like one or two people had to cancel, which I get it, completely understand. And now we're under 230. We're like, honestly, we're like about a quarter of the way to where this show would become like extremely close to full time. I think we're like a fifth away from this show being like a full time thing. If I had 4 times the number of patrons, this show would be doing a hell of a lot more episodes. If not like the podcast version with the long form interview, I'd be going live for like news updates and clips and just like live streams a lot more frequently. And we're about, if I had 5 times that number, this would be like a full, I'd be able to do a full-time thing. Just to give you guys, I'm not saying like, you know, you gotta get there. You have to make me, do it for me. Pay me. You know, I'm basically telling you guys like the show really is growing. Like we are getting close. We're inching there. Who knows? Maybe in like a year, maybe 2. We'll see. As always, to my patrons, if you did not get into the Discord and the link is expired, reach out to me. I will get you a Discord link. Patrons, there will be a upcoming private show. I mean, makes it sound like I'm gonna jump on like OnlyFans for you guys, right? No, that's not gonna happen. But we'll do a patron only show where we'll like, you know, do a more laid back chit chat. And you know what? I'm gonna invite also everyone who ever was a patron, I think, for this first one. Just as like a big thank you. Because, you know, I feel like some of the earlier patrons who aren't still patrons, who had to cancel due to various reasons throughout the years, they missed out, I think, on some of the show's growth. And so I'm going to give everyone who's ever been a patron a taste there. I'll let you guys know the details. And what else? That's the show. That's the show, guys. That's the show. Zoe says, I'm already forsaking 2 meals a week for Matt. How much will you take? I really hope that's not true. I know you're also joking, but if there's any truth to that, you're making me feel terrible. So please don't skip meals for me. Don't skip meals for me. That's definitely what I don't want. I mean, if you're skipping like a specialty latte at Starbucks, you could do that because that's bullshit food anyway. You could buy like a milkshake at Burger King for like $2. But please take care of yourself. Make sure you're comfortable, your family's comfortable. And only then do I want your financial support. And if you are extremely financially comfortable, then I will make you feel bad, and you should most definitely give me your financial support. And you should feel bad if you're not giving me financial support. If you're making 6 figures or more, you should be giving me money. Let's put it that way. Anything below that depends on the situation. Kowalski gave me a super sticker. Thank you, buddy. The pear character exaggeratedly stretching his arm forward to offer a cup of coffee. Aw, thank you. Zoe says, I ain't missing shit for you. I'm glad. I'm very glad. All right, folks. Oh, once again, if you're already a patron, big help would be going to rate this podcast /doomed. And that will take you to everywhere you could leave a review. I've actually seen the podcast move up. There's places on the charts you can monitor the podcast, and it's gone up. And I see it in the podcast numbers, and even in the YouTube numbers. The people who view the live stream on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope /Twitter, the people who watch the YouTube clips, the people who listen and download the podcast, the numbers there have gone up tremendously. Every now and then maybe there's a slow week, but the trajectory is going up. It's not a hockey stick. It's like a very slowly rising hill. The ground ever so small, ever so little is rising. That's what it looks like. Which is it's. I'll take it. I'll take it. Quasi Peck on Twitch says, if I was making over six figures, I'd probably be watching Ben Shapiro talk about how important I am as a job creator. Ain't that the truth? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, take care. Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in. And I will see you all next time on Doomed. Oh man, I forgot to turn off the mic when I coughed. There you go, a special little bonus blooper reel. My Ben Shapiro forgetting to turn off the live stream camera. My version of that, I should say. Only it's a mic instead of a camera. Goodbye, everybody.